Okay, let's take a look up at the screen. After what major event was there pressure for a stronger central government? Shays' Rebellion, yes. And who kept complete records of the debates? Madison. Don't forget, we can throw Hamilton in there with the Federalist Papers, and also, of course, John Jay as well. Okay, now you've heard the story before, so we'll go through it rather quickly. The original plan was to amend the Articles of Confederation. What does amend mean? Maggie, what does amend mean? Okay, change, make it better, add to. In this case, when we add amendments to the Constitution, we are adding to it. Who wrote the first 10 amendments? Ella. First 10 amendments. Anybody help? It's called the Bill of Rights. Who can help? Give me a name. Go ahead. Madison, James Madison. So on the third day, they scrap the articles, begin to create a new government. 12 of the 13 show up. Who's not there, everybody? Rhode Island is not there. Yes. Go to page 14 of your handout. Let's take a look. Going to take a look at this just like we're reading from a textbook. So look at issue number 1 on page 14. Need for change. Does the government of the articles need to be replaced? Okay, let's take a look at this. And by the way, if you look on page 13, you can see James Madison, which you're more than welcome to read, although of course you just watched that 1-minute video. What do you think about the trousers? Okay, Jesse, read issue number 1, please.
Federalist Alexander Hamilton. The faith, the reputation, the peace of the whole Union are thus continually at the mercy, the prejudices, the passions, and the interests of every member of which it is composed. Is it possible that the foreign nations can either respect or confide in such a government? It is possible.
Is it possible
that the people of America will no longer consent to trust their honor, their happiness, their safety on so precarious a foundation? The Confederation is a system so radically vicious and unsound as to admit not of amendment, but by an entire change in its leading features and characters.
No, Amy.
Anti-Federalist Patrick Henry. The Honorable Gentleman said the great danger would ensue if the convention rose without adopting this system. I asked, where is that danger? I see none. Other gentlemen have told us within these walls that the Union is gone or that the Union will be gone. So they tell us the grounds of their fears. I will consider them as imaginary. Where is the danger? If, sir, there was any, I would refer to the American spirit, which has enabled us to surmount the greatest difficulties.
So as you can see, Patrick Henry saying keep the articles, whereas Madison, Hamilton especially would say no, we got to get rid of it and have a what? I mean, anybody? What we have now? Constitution, yeah. So look at issue number 2. And before we read number 2, remember Tom Paine said that you can't have an island governing an entire continent. That's why he said the United States needs to break from England. You can't have an island of England controlling an entire continent, America. So the same question was asked. Can we have a government in Washington that's going to govern the whole way to, well, not at that time, but to Alaska, to Hawaii? A government in Washington is going to run the show. Joe Biden is going to be in charge of everything from Maine to Florida, the whole way over to Michigan at this time. Well, let's take a look. Yes, the Federalists say. James Madison says yes. Gracie, please.
Federalist James Madison extend the sphere and he takes in a greater variety of parties and interests. He makes it less probable that the majority of the whole will have autonomous motives who made the rights of other citizens. Hence, it clearly appears that the same advantage which the republic has over democracy and concerning the effects of faction is enjoyed by a large over a small.
Now, faction means different ideas. In other words, political parties. When you see that word faction, I want you to think political parties, okay? And let me be clear. Madison is saying the more difference of opinion, the better. It's okay to have difference of opinions. That's what he is saying in Federalist 10. You want different opinions. We don't want a monarchy. No, the Anti-Federalists, James Winthrop says. Evelyn, please.
It is the opinion of the ableist writers on the subject that no extensive empire can be governed on republican principles, and that such a government will degenerate to despotism. No instance can be found of any free government of any considerable extent. Large and consolidated powers may indeed dazzle the eyes of a distant spectator with their splendor, but if examined more nearly, they are always found to be fully reserved.
Now, take a look at issue number 3. That bottom line is, what it's asking is, if we have a president, is that like going back to the king again? And that's a major challenge. We'll come to that in a second. All right, back up to the screen then. Was there a plan to create a new constitution? No, but that's what ends up happening. Okay. So Rhode Island is not there. George Washington was not happy, and we mentioned this before. Okay, let's talk about James Madison. 3 things I want you to know for James Madison. 3 things. He's called the father of the Constitution because he writes most of it. He also writes the first 10 amendments, which are called what? Bill of Rights. And he kept records of the Constitutional Convention, known as what papers? Okay, there's your 3. Father of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Federalist Papers. Take a look at the last 2 lines up there. Right here. Was referred to as Father of the Constitution. Madison protested that the document was not the offspring of a single brain, meaning his, but the work of many heads and many hands. Many people involved. Very humble with his trousers. What do you think, Bryson? Is he right?
What?
Is he right?
I think so.
Let's take a look. We need to know Federalist number 10. Federalist paper number 10. Okay? Write that real big. This is a remarkable discussion. Federalist number 10. Let me ask you to think about something. Let's say you're the coach of a team. You're the coach. You're in charge. You run the show. You're the coach. Forget about Federalist 10. Forget about factions. When do you let your players vote on something? Legendary North Carolina coach Dean Smith once said something about that. When would you let your players vote on something? You're the coach. Georgia, when would you let your players vote?
I don't really know.
Evelyn,
What snacks they want for the next game?
you're the coach.
Yeah.
You're going to let your players decide?
The snacks.
The snacks. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that we're going to allow. How about what offense, what defense to run? Bryson.
If we're having a big blowout win and we're up like 60-2, we may as well
May as
let
well.
the players vote.
Maggie, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say for team.
Okay. But nothing else. You're the coach. You're in charge. It all falls on you. You're in charge for a reason. Well, legendary coach Dean Smith said you only let your players vote 2 situations. When one, you really don't care how they vote. Number 2, if you can predict the outcome of the vote. Okay? Let's take a look at Federalist number 10. In that spirit, it's a remarkable public discussion spawned by the ratification debates between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Remember, the Federalists want the Constitution and it does not need a Bill of Rights. The Anti-Federalists say, no, it needs a Bill of Rights. The problem was the people that were the Federalists said, well, you can't write down every single right you have. How do you do that? How do you include every right you have? What are you going to put in there? You have the right to breathe? Whereas Patrick Henry said, why can't we have a Bill of Rights? Are you worried about wasting paper? So this is what Madison had to say about it. Okay, let's read through this and look at this closely. Bryson, when you're ready.
Federalist 10 is part of a remarkable public discussion spawned by the ratification debates between Federalists and Anti-Federalists on the nature of Republican government. Many Anti-Federalists believe that the Constitution will lead to a large consolidated nation and abolish the Republican governments in the states, which in turn will lead to violations of the rights of citizens. Madison turned that argument on its head by pointing out that in Republican governments in which the majority must rule, an all-powerful majority often sacrifices the natural rights of the minority to their own selfish interests. Tyranny was just as possible in Republican governments as under monarchies and smaller republics. That is, republics the size of American states were especially prone to the danger of majority faction. Some remedy for this mortal disease must be found, Madison argued, if we are to have a republic in which natural rights of all, including the minority, are protected.
Now, when he was talking about minority, he was not talking about race. He was talking about opinion. Let me give you a for instance. Let's say tomorrow, and I've used this example before, but tomorrow we get to decide what breakfast we want. Tomorrow. And we're going to vote on it right now. What are we going to have, Maggie?
Waffles.
Ella.
Waffles.
Pancakes.
Oh.
Say waffles.
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 Say pancakes. So the pancakes are in the minority opinion. So we're going to have waffles. Too bad. No, Madison is saying. Madison is saying you let the majority have their waffles, but you make sure the minority get their pancakes also. You don't steamroll the rights of everyone just because it's a minority of opinion. And that's why you might have a president that's one party, but the majority in Congress might be others. We have a checks and balances. That's what Madison is saying in Federalist number 10. So take a look at this. Very important concept to understand what he is saying here. This is from Federalist 10. Okay? Let's take a second to read through this closely. Georgia, please.
Multiple political factions prevent tyranny. If an extended republic was set up, including a multiplicity of economic, geographic, social, religious, and sectional interests, these interests, by checking each other, would prevent American society from being divided into the clashing armies of the rich and the poor.
You see what he's saying here? Have you ever felt strongly about something and you don't want to hear anybody else's side? Like, I'm done. Madison is saying that's completely wrong. The embrace of different opinions is what will save democracy. The looking at other sections of the country is what saves democracy. You have to have difference of opinions. And you cannot steamroll over or ignore the rights of everybody. See, some might argue that in politics, you don't want different of opinion. You're in charge, you're going to run the show. But don't coaches have assistants and athletic directors and principals and superintendents also? Think about it. Okay? So what he is saying is you need everybody. And you don't ignore other opinions. So if someone wants to have a different religious belief, that's okay. Okay? So take a look at this. Maggie, please.
Madison. Multiple political factions would help in preventing tyranny.
And that's what I want you to understand. Basically what Madison said, and you'll hear the historian say it in the video, the more the merrier. The more diversity is better. Sometimes that gets ignored in politics. Other times it's embraced. Okay? The minority of opinion does not mean it's wrong. And that's the key point here. That's what Madison is saying in Federalist 10. And I asked you to take a look at that for Wednesday. Okay? So make sure you do. Look at that closely. Okay? Political factions are the savior of democracy. The more difference of opinion you have, the better. And you know what? In history, besides the debates over freedom and slavery and things like that, I don't know that we've seen much more debates than what we have now in politics. Have you seen anything over the last year or two? Constant debates, constant discussions. Madison is probably screaming from his grave saying that's a good thing. Okay, think about it. How we look at difference of opinions. And he felt that was the savior of democracy. Okay, so the Bill of Rights, we'll take a look at this Quizlet tomorrow, and we'll get to that. All right, I want you to know a term. John Adams here, and this goes along with our checks and balances. I want you to know the term bicameral. Bi. What does the prefix bi mean? Like bicycle. Good. 2. I want you to know that he wanted a bicameral legislature. What would our bicameral legislature be today? What is our bicameral legislature? Jesse? Exactly. The House and the Senate. Yes. And he felt that would create checks and balances, because which one do you get to no matter how big your state is? Which one do you get to? Good.
The Senate.
The Senate. And how is the House determined? How many representatives you have? Good. For every 500,000 people, you get 1. Okay? Pennsylvania has 21. Bicameral. And that was John Adams. So, what were some arguments for or against the new Constitution? Well, there certainly were many. There certainly were many arguments for and against the new Constitution. Patrick Henry got that disgusted. He actually left the Constitution, turned down an invitation to come back. Some felt that's the equivalent of picking up your toys and going home. Others felt that that was a strong statement. Anybody in the school musical? Okay, play. Good. I need someone to be an actress then. Who's going to do it? Okay, Sarah, you're up. All right, I'll tell you when. Ready? Patrick Henry turned down an invitation to the Constitutional Convention. He simply put, didn't trust it. He was a leading figure in the American Revolution, but decided not to be a delegate because, as he later revealed, he, Sarah.
Smelled a rat.
Sorry, I cut you off. Say it again.
Smelled a rat.
What does that mean? You say, I smelled a rat. What does that mean? Nobody knows what it means. Well, we got to know what it means or it won't make any sense. But
And for you think there's something suspicious there that
absolutely. Absolutely. Something's wrong. Something's not right. If you smell a rat. One great example of that, by the way, is in the play Hamlet, where Hamlet himself said, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. He also said, dog will have its day. So is he a Federalist or anti-Federalist? What do you think? Anybody want to take a shot? Bryson?
Federalist?
No, he's anti. He wants that Bill of Rights, period. Okay. So the president of the Constitutional Convention was, you guessed it, none other than who? Who's the president? George Washington. He was the president of the Constitutional Convention. So he's there in Philadelphia. He didn't say much at all. All he did was recognize, okay, Sarah, it's your turn to talk. Okay, Gracie, it's your turn to talk. Okay, Georgia, it's your turn. He didn't do much except recognize speakers. He basically kept it going. But since he was there, it added prestige to it. What does that mean? He's there, so there's prestige in this meeting. What does that mean? Go ahead.
It means that it's recognized.
Good or bad?
Usually good.
Usually good. So let's say after school today, there's a function going on. Okay, we're going to have a function after school today, Sarah. All right? And everybody finds out, are you going? Are you going? Well, I don't know. Are you going? I don't know. Are you going? Well, guess what? Bryson's going. Well, if Bryson's going, then we better go. Because that's a prestigious function. Right, Bryson? Heck, I'm going. Okay? We better be there. You know what I mean, Bryson, right? That's the place to be. Yes. Okay, so the Anti-Federalists, and again, you've heard the story before, which is why I'm going through it quickly, argued that the Constitution would put an end to individual liberty. And the key phrase there is an end to individual liberty. In other words, you can think of this as the rights of the people. Go ahead.
So then Patrick Henry, he didn't trust the Constitution, but isn't the Bill of Rights part of the Constitution? So
Yeah, and you're exactly right. You're thinking this through. He didn't trust the Constitution unless it had a Bill of Rights. See, right now, they weren't going to add one. And what's so ironic is the guy who said we don't need a Bill of Rights, James Madison, is the one that writes it. Because he said, why do we need a Bill of Rights? To protect us from ourselves? Don't we elect people? Why do we need to write everything down? Whereas Patrick Henry's saying, yes, we need a Bill of Rights because we need everything spelled out because it prevents tyranny. So think about it this way. What Madison is saying is, I'm all about rights of the people, but who do you elect in government? Who do you elect? The people. So someday we might elect Jesse as president. But why do we need a Bill of Rights? To protect us from Jesse? Jesse's one of us. She's a people, just like us. We don't need protection from our friends, our neighbors, our citizens. That's what Madison was saying. He said it's ridiculous because if you write down your rights, then you limit yourself. This is what you're allowed to do. But you can't do that in just 10 amendments. But see, Madison was smart because don't forget, he added the 9th and the 10th Amendment, which kind of covered everything. Although it wasn't all done then. Because we added many more amendments after that. Okay? So the Anti-Federalists want a Bill of Rights added to the Constitution. So they had a compromise. And the Constitution has been called a bundle of compromises. You get the idea. Compromise, obviously, you want to think that you get enough that you're happy. You don't get everything you want, probably. One big one was on representation. Now, once again, which branch of Congress do we determine by the state's population? The House. So we have a bicameral legislature. Every state gets 2, no matter what size, in the Senate. And once again, every state in the population, represented by population, was? You just said it. What branch of Congress determined by population? The House. The other part would be equal, 2 for every state. So how many senators are there right now today in Congress? Maggie? 100, yes. Note that. Understand that. There's 100 because there's 2 from every state. We have 50 states. Now, the South says part of the population, you should count slaves. The North said that's not fair because you don't recognize slaves as actual citizens. So they compromised on that. And I want you to understand the 3/5 compromise. The 3/5 compromise. Are you familiar with this? Okay. 3/5. Now I know what you're thinking. Why didn't they just say half compromise and make it a lot easier in our mathematics? But that's not the way they did it. So for one person, a slave equals 3/5. 3/5 compromise. Okay, so does anybody know the answer to this question? How many representatives, sorry about the extra S there, make up the U.S. House of Representatives? Does anybody know how many there are right now today? Good.
Is that like 435?
It is 435. 435 today. Here's a question from Jeopardy. I took this picture right from the television. This state today has only one representative because it's based on population in Congress. It also, in its history, has only sent a grand total of 4 men to fill that seat. Does anybody know what state this would be? Anybody want to take a guess? Where are my fingers? Good.
Montana.
It's not Montana. Good guess, though. Good guess. Montana actually has 2. No, they might have 3. Billings is a pretty big state. Or city. Good.
I thought maybe it would be Rhode Island.
It's not Rhode Island. Another good guess. We'll soon get there.
Alaska?
It's Alaska. Alaska. See, the reason why, if you notice 4 men, because Rhode Island's been around since the beginning, so you would have had more than 4 total, but Alaska's not. 1959. Okay, number 2, the executive branch. The executive branch was very difficult. Yes, I need to update the pictures. Obviously, President Obama and now President Biden. He was vice president at that time. Why would it be difficult to establish an executive branch? We just said it a few minutes ago. Jesse, why is that difficult? Why would some not want it?
Because they didn't want another king.
Another king all over again. What are the 3 parts of the executive branch? Ella, give me one.
President.
President, of course. Another one, anybody? Vice president and something Washington established.
Cabinet.
The cabinet. All right, go to page 14 of your handout, please. Down at the bottom, issue number 3, real quick let's take a look. Issue number 3. Evelyn, go, please.
Federalist Alexander Hamilton. Oh, do you want me to read the issue?
Yeah, read the
Okay.
issue.
Will the new constitutional government create an aristocratic power in the presidency? No. Federalist Alexander Hamilton. There is no comparison between the intended power of the president and the actual power of the British Commonwealth. The president of the United States would be an officer elected by the people for 4 years. The King of Great Britain, professional and hereditary prince. Let answer shall we give to those who persuade us that things so unlike resemble each other. The same that ought to be given to those who have that government, the whole power of which would be in the hands of the elected and periodical servants of the people, and an aristocracy, a monarchy, and a despotism.
Pause. So, what's one argument that this is okay?